everybody, and welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's Diana.
Hey, Diana.
And it's Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
Hey, Rob and Diana.
Joining us in the virtual studio is Mallory Quinn. Hi, Mallory. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you for having me.
It's very nice to have you here on the show. So from the preview episode, listeners know that we are going to be talking about sports performance this week. And since we'd actually already done one of Mallory's articles way back when we talked about tag teaching.
Episode
5, she'd reached out and we started some emails. And since she had a lot of research on the subject, we said, well, let's all get together and let's talk a little bit more in depth about some ways that behavior analysis can be used in sports. So
Sports.
Hooper ball and foot soccer, our favorite sports. So before we get into the articles, Mallory, could you tell us a little bit? Well, tell us, we know a little bit about you, but tell the audience, more importantly, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I just graduated from USF's PhD program in May.
Woo!
Congratulations.
Pretty exciting. And for the past 6 years, I've been doing research in the area of enhancing dance performance. Mm-hmm. So I grew up as a competitive dancer and a musical theater performer. So that's always been something that I'm very passionate about. And I started with that first article that you guys talked about, the Tag Teach one. And then I've conducted multiple studies since then and supervised multiple studies on enhancing dance performance and then also decreasing this coercive teaching that sometimes exists in competitive dance. And then I'm looking to expand that research in other sports areas. So I'm working with some individuals in doing research in areas outside of dance. But my big undertaking after I graduated is I just started my own company. It's called Applied Behavior Analysis Sports Innovations, and we're trying to disseminate the science of ABA to the general sports population. So I'm starting by working with dance studios, and then I'm going to expand to other sports areas as well.
Wow.
Excellent.
Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's abasportsinnovations.com, and we also have a Facebook and an Instagram and all that. So we're just getting started. It's really exciting and scary, but I'm excited about it. But yeah, it's a brand new market right now. So that's been the challenge so far, is convincing people to use a product or a service that they don't know much about. But I'm super confident in the company and the awesome research that we're doing, that once it gets going, it's going to really propel from there. I'm really excited about it. We have a couple dance studios that have signed on with us for this upcoming year. So we're going to be working with their competitive dancers, and it's just really exciting. And I'm excited to expand to other sports as well.
So if your dance studios you're working with, if they win the big competitions, are they going to make a Moneyball movie kind of like you guys? Look at behavior analysis did this.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's the goal. One of the studios, she's already calling me the dance doctor.
Nice.
She's like, you need to change your whole website and have it be called the Dance Doctor. And it's really funny. So, but yeah, everybody's super excited about it. Like I said, we're starting small right now. We have 5 studios, but I'm confident that, within the year we're going to expand. And I think that once we start working with some students and they do start winning, that the word will spread, because everybody wants their kid to be the best. And when they're in that competitive world, I'm really excited about it. And like I said, all of our training is positive and non-coercive. So we focus on using the most effective and specific feedback possible. Antecedent manipulations, it's all data-based. We don't yell at any kids or make them feel bad about themselves or anything like that. So I think that's exciting too, that we're enhancing the performance, but we're also trying to kind of change the culture of competitive training, which is a lofty undertaking.
That is so cool.
So yeah. I actually went to a dance class as an adult.
Yeah, I heard your story about it.
And it was coercive. I dropped out.
Oh yeah.
But maybe I'll come back to your dance classes. I always want to feel better about myself, so
Are you going to be
Yeah.
performing competitively, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then Mallory can help you.
Yeah. Come and watch my competitive performance.
I always
and
wanted to do more dance myself. I could sing, but I never did dance, and I feel like it always held me back, from that West Side
You
Story
could have been a triple
performance.
threat, Rob.
I know, I could have.
You got the singing, you got the acting, but it may be too late for you for dance. I don't know.
Mallory, is it too late? Is it too late for dance?
No, anyone can dance. You just need the right teachers.
Right.
You need the environmental contingencies.
So I'm sure that we'll talk more about this as we move forward, but as you were saying all of this about dance companies looking or learning about behavior analysis, I could see this type of service being really helpful for increasing performance, but also potentially for decreasing injury for certain sports. Is that something that you guys have thought about?
Yes, we actually had a parent who participated, her child participated in the dissertation, and she actually wrote us like something really nice after the study was over, saying that her student had been enrolled in dance class before, and they were just trying to get her to accomplish the movement without consideration of doing it the right way, using her body the right way. And she said that she really noticed in the private lessons that her daughter received during the dissertation that there was a super intense focus on engaging the muscles correctly, because we super break down the movements like very intensely. We focus on every individual component. There's a lot of research actually I found out there's a link between coercive training and injuries. So people who are trained coercively are more likely to have lifelong injuries. They're more likely to justify it to something other than their training, to say, oh, it's just my body, whatever.
I have bad knees.
Yeah, and I'm actually a Pure Barre instructor. It's a ballet-based workout. And
Love it.
Yeah, you do it?
Yeah, well, I kind of do it. Let's be honest, it's really hard.
It is hard, but when I started doing it as an adult, I have a ton of injuries from dance, and I always thought my body just sucked. I was like, oh, I have terrible knees, whatever. But when I started working at Pure Barre, I met all these former dancers who all were super injured, and I was like, oh, this is a common thing. But it doesn't have to be like that. Like if you learn dance the correct way and you really learn what muscles to engage, and you don't have a teacher who's over forcing turnout or something like that, there shouldn't be that many injuries. So
Interesting.
yeah,
I did not know this.
I just assumed if you dance, I mean, you're moving, you're using your body and using all the muscles, that you're just wear and tear. You're just not gonna. You're just gonna get hurt.
Right.
Yes, of course. There's always the risk of that, but there's definitely too many injuries that are preventable, if that makes sense. Like muscle tears from overuse, people overusing certain muscles because they're not engaging other muscles enough, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I thought the research on the coercive training was really interesting when I started researching that. And we actually did a cool study that we're trying to get published right now. It was a descriptive analysis of dance teacher methods. So we went into studios and we collected partial interval data on what type of teaching they use. So did they provide general feedback, specific feedback? Was it yelling? Was it talking? All kinds of different behavioral definitions for each thing. And we found that there is a lot of coercive training going on, and there is very, very little specific feedback given during class. There's a lot of general feedback, but not specific feedback.
Is it feedback like, you're not dancing well, do better?
Yeah, and even there's a lot of general positive feedback. So there's a lot of general feedback like good or better, but there really is very little specific feedback. So I think that's why things like tag teach are so effective, because it's just a different way of teaching that the dance teachers aren't currently doing. And I'm interested to replicate that study in other sports areas as well, because I think that it's probably similar in other competitive environments.
Well, why don't we get into the research itself now, and then we can come back to some of these topics after we've gotten a base for the audience. So we're going to be talking about two articles. One is one of yours, and one you'd recommended for us. The first article is a performance improvement program for an international level track and field athlete by Scott and Goldwater from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, 1997.
I initially thought that was someone whose name was Scott.
Scott. Good old Mr. Scott.
That would be an awesome name.
Yeah.
and an intervention featuring public posting and graphical feedback to enhance the performance of competitive dancers by Dr. Mallory Quinn, Raymond Miltenberger, Abreau, and Narozanick from Behavior Analysis and Practice 2017. So, Mallory, why don't we start with the international track and field athlete? And you'd recommended this article as kind of a pairing for our topic today. What about this article do you find so interesting or appealing?
Well, I know it is an older article, but I like it because it was one of the first ones I read in grad school that really got me thinking about how I could use like prompting and shaping for enhancing desired movements in sports. So in this article, they increased the arm extension by using a shaping procedure with a photoelectric beam.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, can you just go through what the arm extension piece is?
He was a pole vaulter.
The pole vaulter. But for folks who maybe have never seen pole vaulting.
Right.
Well, I watched a lot of goofy cartoons.
Like most people who didn't go to private schools or don't watch the Olympics.
I watch goofy track and field.
Okay. Or they haven't seen the goofy track and field.
Basically, they were saying that this was a competitive athlete. So, this is interesting, too, because people automatically think that competitive athletes have, perfect form or great form. And they were saying that this person had a deficit in their arm extension. And that, as a result, was not allowing the pole vaulter to get as high. From how I understand it, I'm not a pole vaulter either.
You have to stick the pole at a certain angle.
Into a little
divot.
Ditch
Divot.
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And then fly through the air.
With your
Bends.
legs
From
first,
there.
right?
With your legs first.
Do their feet go first or does their head go first?
The feet go first, right?
Is this where you're trying to jump over a bar?
Yeah, it's a high bar. So, Mallory, pole vaulting, you go feet first, right?
I don't know much about pole vaulting.
I'm going to look it up because I don't actually know the answer and I feel like we should know the answer.
Okay, well, while you look that up, let's keep going. So this young man...
So it said that he was 21 at the time of the study and that he had been doing this for 10 years. He'd been pole vaulting competitively for 10 years, which if you do math, that means he started when he was 11?
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you actually know who this guy is?
From
Well, so
1997?
he's a long time ago.
It doesn't matter.
This guy
Yeah,
would have been
that's
an adult when we were like teenagers or younger.
Yeah, I was a 7-year-old then, so.
That's impressive that you would start pole vaulting competitively at such a young age. And also continue to have the same problem with your arm extension for 11 years.
Yeah, that's what I found interesting.
Right?
And you got a lot with competitive dancers, too. They can have some kind of little, like, habitual problem in a prep or something like that, and it can affect the whole rest of their movement. So that's one thing I thought was interesting, how the increase in the arm extension affected the entire increase in the bar height. And we see that in dance, for example, a plie and a jump. So before they jump, they have to bend their knees to really use that resistance to push off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, for example, we see dancers that don't plie deep enough. So that's something we target with acoustical feedback. And then things like in a turn, there's certain things that they need to do with their arms or with their balance that they're not doing. And then that can affect how many times they get around, all kinds of stuff like that. So that's one reason I really like this article.
So I just watched a video of pole vaulting. So I'm just going to give a play-by-play to our listeners. So pole vaulting, you have a real long stick, a pole, and you hold it in front of you and you run real fast. And then you stick it in a little divot and then you propel your body up so it's like almost parallel with the pole and your feet go over first. And your head goes last. So it looks like once you're parallel with the pole, then you like push up.
And you vault.
And you vault over a bar.
It looks really easy, guys.
I can't see the video from here. So the height of your arms would have something to do in terms of how much force you could get the pole, or how angle
get
you
your
got
body.
The pole and the divot, I guess, yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
The momentum or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Makes me sick actually watching it.
So what they did in this study, they did not use tag teach.
Did they have tag teach? Was that something in 97?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they use the photo beam and reach.
Yeah, I loved that. So that was
the low-tech reach.
That was the prompt. That was a verbal prompt. Reach. But they also had the, what was it? LED?
The photoelectric beam.
But
Is that
it
like
still
an LED?
had that immediate feedback in the moment.
So did it make a beep if you broke the beam? Is that what happened? Yeah, a beep when the beam was broken.
All right, so you could see
So
it.
you got that immediate feedback as well. So if you
Yeah.
made it over, then you didn't hear the beep. So that was a good thing. They worked on this for 18 months.
That's a long time.
It is a long time.
Is that the case typically, Mallory, when you're dealing with someone, maybe even at a higher level, that just the amount of time it takes to make small incremental changes just seems so high?
I mean, in dance, it's like, for example, when you start, I teach 3-year-olds ballet, and you do almost the same exercises when you're a teenager. You're just in the class, you add on and you do more complex, but you're using all the same positions. You're still doing first position with your feet, bar work, center work. So it's really a lot of repetition. And yeah, in 1 year, you might just see really small incremental changes, and that would still be a success, I think. So yeah, and I remember you guys said that with my article too, because we did like 6 months of data collection, but we did only do about like 15 to 30 minutes a week. So yeah, that's another thing too.
Yeah, you only get like one opportunity per week.
Yeah,
So,
and like when I teach dance, there's moms that, watch Dance Moms, and they're like, why don't my kids look like this? And it's like, well, those kids dance about 5 or 6 hours a day, every single day. They're like homeschooled so they can dance more. So, yeah.
It's
It takes a long
crazy.
time.
Wow. All right.
I love that this pole vaulter. So when you're looking at the graph, they did a change in criteria design. So they started. They started with 515 feet.
It can't be feet.
No, because it was his reach. It was his reach.
It
they
must
wanted.
be.
He can't reach that high.
Yeah, I'm not good with inches.
I don't know. Let's find the
Let's
answer so we don't.
The unit of measurement.
Meters.
Well, they talk about it in meters.
2.52 meters, but then it says jumped 515, 520, 525, 527.
Is that?
Well, yeah, what's interesting is that the numbers on the bottom are the actual height, and then the numbers at the top were the criterion. So what's interesting is that the graph kind of makes it look like as they increase the criterion that he didn't get as high. But if you look at the bottom, because that's the percentage close to the criterion that he got.
Oh.
So yeah, so it's a little confusing when you look at it at first, because like when I looked at it, I was like, oh, he's going down at the end,
Right.
but then I realized that was the actual percentage of the criterion. So if you look at the bottom, he actually went up in the overall numbers. So yeah, I would have liked it if they had like 2 different graphs so you could see, but yeah.
One for reach and one for pole vault height.
Each percentage to the criterion, yeah.
They described it a bit, but I mean, again, it's not like baseball or something that everyone's kind of got a great grasp of what that might look like. Let me describe pole vaulting to you. It doesn't really capture it.
I would love to like include like pictures in my articles of like what the dance movements look like, but it's so hard because they make you take out, so much stuff for publication. So
They sure do.
Yeah.
Can you you guys might know this too. Could you link find this for the appendix and you can go online and see the movements? Could you?
I have seen articles that included links to varying web
I think Nick's did.
sources.
Nick
Nick
Vancelos did.
Yeah, maybe more in the future they'll do that.
That'd be
kind of
nice.
nice. They usually say it's available from the author.
Yeah, but then who's
You guys-
emailing?
You guys guessed it really well when you were talking about the article as to what they looked like. I was really impressed.
Oh, really?
Thank you.
That means that you wrote it well.
That's right.
I was impressed though. I was like, wow, like you were like the scorpion. That must be the leg behind touching the head. I was like, oh.
I told you we should have filmed our efforts, you guys.
All right, cool. What else do we want to say about Mr. Pole Vaulter?
So, I mean, I guess what would you, in terms of sports, where 10 years past this, in terms of sports performance and sort of the big take home for this, Mallory, was there anything in this article that you feel you directly, pull from?
I mean, mainly the immediate in the moment feedback, and then also the breaking down of the technical skills to the point that the focusing on the execution of a preparation movement, which is kind of what I consider in there, like the arm height, results in an increase in the final movement. I feel like a lot of times in sports, in dance especially, we tend to focus on some more salient aspects of the movement, such as how high can I get this leg? How many times can I turn around in a pirouette? And those technical, precise preparation movements are lost. And like we were talking about, even this guy who's been a professional competitor for 10 years is still making this mistake. And that immediate, in the moment feedback is what really helped him. That's what I like. I think it's just a very nice, like, basic article to stem that sports research from.
Yeah. It's only 3 pages long for anyone who is looking for a quick digestion of an article. Also, Rob, this 1997 was 20 years ago, dude.
I'm not good with numbers.
Yeah, he said earlier today that 1987 was 10 years ago.
We were saying, when was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction released? And I said 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
1987.
Just don't acknowledge it.
I know. All right, let's move on.
Anyway, sports performance research sure has improved, especially the area of dance.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Before we get into the next article, I just want us to take a little quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hey, ABA Inside Trackers. Are you interested in being a behavior analyst and you're not yet? If so, I really would recommend looking into the Regis College Masters in Science and Applied Behavior Analysis program. Our 2016 pass rates for first-time test takers of the BCBA exam was 90%. We think this is a true testament to our program. In addition, we're going to be starting an on-campus autism center in the summer of 2017. This is going to allow our graduate students on-hands learning right at our college, and you will receive partial tuition remission if you work at the center, which is pretty amazing. We also offer paid clinical placements and graduate assistantships starting in our students' first year, where all of our grad students are working in the field either part-time or full-time. I find you that job. That is part of my job. We also are approved by the BACB to provide intensive practicum, so students will complete 750 hours of an intensive practicum across their time at Regis. All of our faculty are PhD-level BCBAs with strong applied and research backgrounds in ABA, and all have published papers in respected peer-reviewed journals. We ensure small class sizes so that all students receive personalized attention from their professors and advisors, are easily accessible to meet with students. 2 more really great things that I want to highlight about the Regis program is that we host an invited lecture series at Regis each year, which involves inviting outside experts in ABA to speak on specialized topics relating to practicing ABA. Last summer, we completed an international service trip to Iceland. This trip enabled students to learn more about providing culturally competent care to diverse populations. Students and alums worked with children diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder and provided parent and teacher trainings for 11 days. This service trip occurs every other year, and the next trip will be in the summer of 2018. And finally, we have a great location. We're just 12 miles from the center of Boston. We currently have rolling admission. We're accepting students until we reach capacity for the fall of 2017. Please check us out at www.regiscollege.edu.
All right, and we are back. And so let's get into your so first of all, Mallory, are those 3 moves? Are those just like the 3 moves that everyone's got to learn? So that's why you're using them the most?
Are they the moves that everyone gets wrong?
So what's interesting is I did my first study at one of the studios, and they loved it so much that I just kept doing my research there. Mm-hmm. And every studio kind of has their special little like trick moves that they do. And this studio really liked these 3 moves. So in the other studies, they were like, oh, we want to do these 3 moves again. But what's interesting is the more studies that I did, if you compare the task analyses in all my studies, they get better and better. Like I look at that first task these, and I'm like, ew, I can't believe like I was using this. So I like edited them throughout the research to make them better, more steps, more precise. Because, you learn as you do research, like, when you do IOA, you're like, oh, I could have made this a little bit more clear, but you'd have to go back and like rescore everything. So
Right.
It's kind of like a learning process that in the next study, I maybe took one step and I broke it down into 3 more steps or something like that. But yeah, that's why a lot of the moves are the same. And I wanted to mention too, because you guys mentioned like the peer auditory feedback, and we can kind of talk about that later. We just published a study in that as well.
Mhm.
So
Awesome.
we did an extension of that other one.
Okay. Yeah, we should talk about that at the end. So in this study, you use public posting as your main independent variable to increase accuracy with, I'm going to tell what the audience, in case they haven't heard episode 5, the double grabbing leg around turn, the back catch scorpion kick, and the switch kick side stride leap.
Yes.
Okay.
And now Mallory will demonstrate those for us.
No, I definitely cannot anymore.
Shh, they won't know. Shh. Oh, it was amazing.
Oh my goodness,
Wow.
Scorpion.
Sorry, you guys weren't here to see that, audience. It was great. Those task analyses are really good.
I am old now. I can't do those anymore.
So Mallory,
Break a hip. I tried.
Mallory, what led you to do this specific article? I mean, this specific research, like this.
Okay, when we did the extension of the auditory feedback, the peer auditory feedback study, the dancers kept asking to see their graphs. Every week they were like, because they knew we were doing research, and I'd kind of explained to them what we were doing, and every week they were like, can I see my graph? Can I see my graph? And I was like, no, I can't show you your graph because that was a confound, obviously. I was like, I'll show you at the end of the study, but it gave me the idea of showing them their graphs and then giving them their feedback on the task analysis. So then when I started looking into the research on that, I found the public posting. And then I thought of things, I know I keep going back to Dance Moms, but how she kind of does like the negative thing with the pyramid where she like ranks the girls. And I thought, well, what if we did something like that, but we made it positive? So we took that, we completely change it. And we make it so, the girls get praised every week on their performance. And if they don't increase, they just get praised for participating and for trying. But then if they do increase, they get some sort of recognition from everybody in the studio. So that was my idea. And this is one of my favorite studies that we did because it was just so simple, I feel. Really, all we did was post the graphs. If they reached a certain criterion, they got a star. And it was really cute to see in the studio because this studio was what I would consider a coercive studio. I love everybody there, but they throw shoes at kids.
Oh, wow.
Wait, ballet shoes?
All kinds of shoes.
Oh, wow.
Combat boots.
Yeah, they
stilettos.
do a lot of yelling at the kids and that kind of thing. And so it was really cool when I did this study because it was just like you saw the teachers acting different and being like, oh my gosh, so-and-so got a star. That's so cool. And they were, really positive. And what was funny was at the end of the study, when we collected social validity data, the girls said that their teachers were so much nicer to them. And the teachers said that, the teachers said that they were the same though.
Oh.
So it's kind of funny. Because the teachers were like, oh, I always praise my students. And then the students were saying, no, I got so much more praise.
Right.
So it was kind of funny to see that. But yeah, it was really nice. It was just a nice, positive thing. And I was really nervous when we first started it about giving the girls their feedback because I didn't want anybody to get upset or cry or something like that. But they were all super happy about it. They said that they thought it showed their teacher how hard they were working and they practiced moves outside of class and they were proud of it. So it was really cool. I liked it.
So to get into a little more detail, you'd pull your 3 participants, your 3 dancers,
Four
dancers, and they'd come out of class for sort of a little practice, similar to the Tag Teach article.
Yes.
And then you'd have your task analysis, and you'd make the graph, or the teachers would make the graph from that, right?
Oh no, I made the graph.
You made the graph. Okay.
Yeah, so what would happen is the teacher would do her little like ceremony with all the kids, we were calling it, where she'd put the poster up, show their graphs. If they got, I believe we did 90% or higher, they got a star, which I talk about that in the discussion, how I would change that. And then if they didn't get a star, they were just, told great job, or, let's get it up next week. You can do it. I believe in you. Some sort of encouraging statement.
I love that.
You can do it.
Yeah. And then what we would do if the girls were in intervention was we would pull them out of class. I'd show them their checklist. So I'd say, this is what you got your score on. This is what you got yeses on, what you got no's on. And all I did was show them their checklist, and they tried it again. They did know what the checklist looked like at the beginning also. Mm-hmm. So they were aware of what was on the checklist, but once they were in intervention, I actually sat down and I said to them, on this part you weren't pointing your toe, on this part you didn't brush your foot, but you did this better than last week, that kind of thing. So really all it was a super specific breakdown of their performance, and then they had that added motivational component with the public posting.
Mm-hmm. And the behavioral skills training that you did with each of the dancers, that was not something that was typical in the dance studio, right?
What do you mean?
So, like...
You mean the breakdown, Jackie?
Yeah,
like
the breakdown. So when you're using
the shoe method.
Yeah. Well, when you're using the behavioral skills training and then reviewing their sheets, that's not something that happened.
No. So typically in like a group class, how it works is you do a warm-up, you do across the floor, and that's when you perform some sort of movement across the floor with a partner or something like that. And like we said in the descriptive study, usually they're just yelling corrections to them or yelling good or better or something like that. And then they usually do choreography at the end of class where they like learn a dance or work on recital or comp dance, something like that. So yeah, it was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be getting that much intense specific feedback on everything that they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
But again, easy to take their performance and then make the graphs from it. And
it was easy for me. For my dissertation research, I actually wrote a manual, like a 200-page manual on how to do all this stuff, and I tested it with dance teachers in the community to see if they could do it or how much training was required. And what we found is that teachers are very good at scoring it. They can score it easily, but the graphing and all that kind of scares them. But
it's so easy.
Yeah, graphing's the easy part.
Or what you could do is just make them a template.
I tried that. Yeah.
Yeah, but just be like, here's one Excel spreadsheet. Just copy it and then put numbers in.
Yeah, I think I definitely would need like a software, but I tried the template thing and they were still very scared of that. So
I think people generally are pretty scared of Excel.
Yeah, but like even for my business right now, there's a studio that's hiring me to just do like an assessment of their dancers like every 6 weeks. So I'm going to come in and assess, their moves or their percentage correct on the target behaviors and then graph it for them. And then I'm going to do that every 6 weeks for them. Yeah. So
but they
can always to do it.
Yeah, they could just fill in a box on the graph itself, because I know there was a lot of description placed into how pretty the graphs were with the glitter and you got your star and everything, which I think was good, a good thing to look ahead. These dancers, you don't know if this is going to go over well to begin with, because maybe the kids are going to all cry. So make it look nice and sweet to match the studio, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
I appreciated all the details that we got in this article.
Oh, thanks.
Like that. Yeah, just a lot of nice additional technical information. These girls were 13 to 16. So, yeah, they're in the glitter phase.
They need that. They need the glitter.
Yeah.
We had one girl that was, like, absent for a couple sessions, and the teacher was like, we need to put a big red mark that says absent.
Oh.
I was like, it's not that kind of thing. Like, we're just gonna leave it blank.
We're going to throw hers away.
I'm going to throw a shoe at that graph when I see her next.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun environment.
Okay, I want to stop us all real quick, though. Let's take a little break for our first secret code word. So for those of you who don't know, ABA Inside Track is a source of continuing education. According to the BACB, we are ACE approved. So you need to have our 2 secret code words spread throughout this episode when you apply, if you're interested in applying for CEs. And the first secret code word is boot, B-O-O-T, like a Wellington boot or a boot on your foot.
Are you Canadian now?
Not a boot. Stop that. That's not appropriate. Not everyone in Canada talks like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Boot. There's a snake in my boot.
There you go. That's a better one. Boots. So, simple intervention that paid out pretty well. What were the main? And you did mention that there were some kind of limitations or some thoughts you had as to how you'd run this again in the future. We talked about the graphing being time consuming, and you mentioned in the article how time consuming that became.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as far as the start, I would make it goal-based. So from their intervention, calculate. So like when we have a task analysis that's like 30 or 40 steps or whatever, you can tell in the task analysis that there's certain things that have to do with the dancer's flexibility. For example, getting the legs at 180 degrees in a leap. And a dancer might never be able to do that if she doesn't have the flexibility. So what I would do, and I did this in the dissertation, is I would sit down, go through the task analysis and mark yeses for everything I think the dancer can do perfectly. Mm-hmm. That score as their goal. And then if they meet that goal, they would get a star. So that's what we did for the dissertation. So we made it more like based on the dancer's technique or their baseline performance rather than saying 90% or above. Yeah, I looked back on that and I was like, that's a little crazy because one of the girls, like she kind of plateaued. I think it was a third participant. Mimi, yeah, she kind of plateaued, but she was like a brand new dancer, so she just didn't have the flexibility to do some of these things. And
she made improvements from baseline.
Her kick,
some
especially.
Of her skills, but she didn't make it to 90%. So I could see how that would also be frustrating for her as a new dancer.
Like, oh,
I'm not very good.
Not very good.
Yeah. She had some self-deprecation, which I understand. I mean, I would be the same way too if I was next to a girl, like my graph was next to a girl that had been dancing her whole life and had hyperextended legs, and she's getting hundreds and I'm over here like trying my best getting 60s or whatever. So so that's one thing that I learned from that. And then I did provide a couple suggestions in there for lessening the time, and then but like I said, that's why I have the company too. So I want people to see the value in this and say, hey, this is something that we're willing to pay for, because we see value in how it enhances athletic performance. So,
no, that makes sense. So, because the way this was set up, they had class on Tuesdays, and then you scored the sessions during the week, and then gave them feedback on the Monday right before the next class.
Yeah, that was a limitation too, is it wasn't as immediate as I would have liked it to be. But the dance teacher was like, "This is the only time we can do this ceremony." So that's always a limitation. Yeah, that's always a limitation when you're in a competitive sports environment. It's so hard to do applied research. Like once it got closer to competition season, like they'd be cutting the sessions shorter. Like they'd be like, "Oh, she can't be pulled out of class because such and such happened, or she doesn't know her comp dance well enough." And it gets really hard in the applied setting like that.
It sounds intense.
You have injuries. I had my participant in this study that was doing the best.
I think it was Kathy. Was it Kathy?
Yeah. I don't remember what her injury was. It was something with her leg.
It was her knee, I think.
Her knee, okay. Yeah, she had that happen, and I was like, no!
Right.
She was like my star participant, so I was like, but that's why, like, whenever I do these studies too, I always have at least 4, because you know how you like to have 3 to show the experimental control if one gets hurt or something like that. So it's hard though in that setting for sure. It's definitely hard. I know you guys talked about too, like how it might be done in a class setting. So like the public posting and the auditory feedback definitely, like even with the company, I'm marketing them as specialized private lessons. The peer tagging we did do in a group setting. So we did have them all in one room, and when they're separate with their partner, they are able to focus on that. It's not too distracting with all the auditory stimuli. So
that's good.
Yeah. So that's something you could do in a class setting for sure.
I guess that would be important, because especially now that you're trying to market this as a efficient tool. You can show the research, look, when I pull these kids out, they make these great improvements. But then the word's going to be, yeah, that's going to cost us way too much money. I mean, I guess you could find private lessons, but that's going to be really hard to keep getting the replication, if you can't do it in a big group. But I mean, are you worried about that? Is there sort of that there's going to be sort of a limit to what you can do in the larger group to make the meaningful change? Or are you sort of looking at it as two different skills, like skills to learn easier in a group and skills that probably would need that level of breakdown and individualized practice?
I definitely think it's like when I started marketing it within the company, it was a private lesson thing, because it does require so much like personal attention and breakdowns. And I am offering certifications as well for teachers. So if a teacher, they can pay me and I can certify them in these methods and teach them all this ABA stuff, and then they can do it themselves. But so far, me doing the private lessons has been a little bit more marketable because I just come in, do them, and that's easier for the studio than having to pay to learn something.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a service they can offer their students that sets them apart from other studios in the area. Yeah, I definitely think marketing it as a private lesson has been most effective.
Okay.
So we know this stuff works for dance. We know this stuff works for pole vaulting. What else you got, Mallory? What other areas do you see this as being a real, able to make real inroads as using these techniques, meaningful techniques?
I really think it can work with anything. So what I'm planning to do is hire coaches from outside like sports areas and train them to do these procedures, because I'm obviously not going to go into a football practice and coach people on a sport that I'm not familiar with. I work as a dance instructor, so I feel comfortable going into dance areas. But I think you could really use it in anything. If you had the ABA knowledge and the knowledge of the sport, I think you could definitely use it.
What would be the key components? Because full disclosure, I have been watching so much of my son's baseball this spring. So when they asked for assistant coaches for soccer, a sport I don't know anything about, I felt bad. They needed. So I said, I'll be an assistant coach. And my method right now is probably more the throw the shoes at the kids one. I want a different one. So I don't know how much you know about soccer, but what are the principles that I shouldn't forget when I'm sort of looking at sort of practice? Like, what are the big picture pieces I need to have?
I would say the breakdown of the movement is so important. So sitting there and really thinking about every single component that makes up. So I don't really know much about soccer, but kicking the ball.
I think that's the most important part, really.
I
You
typed
kick the
scorpion
ball.
kick into Google to find an image, and I did get soccer. So I potentially
You gotta hit it with the side of your
could
foot.
use the scorpion kick.
There you
Nice,
go.
nice.
Matt could help
Yep.
you.
Kick, yeah. So
But
kick.
you definitely need knowledge of the sports skill. So I wouldn't say that any behavior analyst should go out and, try to consult with this stuff unless you have knowledge of the skill. But yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely use it with your son's soccer, if you can break down the skill, or even break down the skill with the coach, and then maybe you could use it with the coach. But I would say the breakdown is the most important. And then there's so much research in different interventions that you can use. So, I mean, I'm trying to take a functional approach with the company, whereas just like with autism, we don't just come in and say, oh, we're doing auditory feedback. We're going to actually assess like what would be best for that person. So, for example, video modeling and video feedback, I hate seeing anything that I do on videotape. Like I'm a performer, and we have all these videos of my shows, and I've never watched them because
Oh no.
I'm repulsed when I see myself on video. So like for someone and there's teenagers that are like that too. So for them, I wouldn't use a video modeling video feedback procedure. And there might be students that are uncomfortable with their graphs being shown to others. And then there's other students, like a lot of the ones I've worked with, that love their graphs being shown off to others and were mad that I had to give them pseudonames in the article because they wanted everyone to know
That's
their
so
first
funny.
and where they dance, and they wanted a picture of them in the article doing the movement.
That's so awesome. Nice.
Like,
Or
it depends on the individual.
Yeah.
And I think you also have to look at what the deficits are. So kind of doing an assessment of what is the coach lacking currently. So like when we did our descriptive study and we found out that there's such a lack of specific praise in dance training, I was really like, oh my gosh, this is why auditory feedback works, because there's a lack of this. So maybe seeing what the coach could do differently, or I know you guys mentioned in the last podcast too that if they're not in a super coercive training method, that this stuff might not be as effective, and I agree with that as well. When I did my dissertation, I did some like preliminary data collection to make sure that the teachers I selected weren't providing a lot of specific praise already, and that kind of thing, just to make sure that there was an EO there. So
that makes sense.
That was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, that was great. And
I
I was just thinking back to the Tag Teach article too, where one of the participants was younger, and you had written that the condition reinforcer component seemed over her head.
She did not care about praise.
Yeah.
And like you also mentioned, we didn't pair the clicker in like an experimental fashion. We just told a clicker means you did it correct. A click means you did it correctly. So that might have been over her head, but I think it was more that she didn't find praise reinforcing. Her mom was the dance teacher who was doing the sessions too. So I think there was like a little
background
that always messes everything up.
But once we did the tokens, it was like a whole new thing, and that's cool too, because we looked at our data and said, this isn't working, what can we change or do to make this effective? So that's cool too, because like we as behavior analysts can apply all that stuff that we do with autism as far as assessments, looking at function, looking at EOs and AOs, or what is lacking, that kind of thing.
And you're basically describing doing an informal reinforcer assessment as well, which could be have an impacted by the child's age.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's cool these days.
Yeah.
Because I'm not up on what's cool anymore.
Oh, what's cool?
Right. No, you don't have to tell me what's cool. But it seems to change, like bottle flipping. That was all the rage. That's over. I hope. Yeah. Hope to God that one's over.
Get your fidget spinner. Great
That's
job doing
over,
the
Rob.
move.
It's over.
Yeah,
it's done.
Fidget spinners now.
I'm spinning this.
You don't need those anymore. Don't bring that back to school in September because it's over. It's done.
Mallory, I'll be honest. I sort of like the idea of using this technique with like the football team, but you still use the same graph with all the glitter and like look at your great touchdown catches, guys. Look at this. Yeah. Ooh, sparkle names and a gold star for you.
Yes. No, I wish somebody trained me doing this stuff. I'm like, I just feel like I would have been so much better if somebody like took the time and.
Yeah.
Do you want to call out your old teacher online? Get it out there. How bad you are.
I'm actually working with my old studio. They're one of our studios.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so don't do that. That's a bad idea.
No.
I don't know much about business, so it's probably not a good.
Yeah, no, all our studios are awesome. I'm really so excited. Like we have the studios we're working with, they're just very great studios in the area, and they do very well at competitions. And I just think it shows a lot about the owners too, that they care about, their students improving and showing data that their students are improving. So, and I had one teacher that said, with the assessment, she said, I can look at the improvement of the students and use that to kind of assess the teachers too. And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So in your study, you didn't work with the entire dance studio. You just worked with these 4 participants, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I was like, oh, is there like secret data out there with like other kids, like. Yeah.
But that's why we kept working at this one studio, because everybody in the studio saw the improvements that the kids made that did the auditory feedback study. And like I said, 2 of those participants were the dance teacher's daughters. So everybody was like, well, I want to be in the next study.
Oh, nice.
So it became this like special thing. So then when we did the peer auditory feedback, we used the teenagers because the older girls all wanted to be in it. And that was what was really cool, is they really enjoy it too. I was worried when I first started doing all this stuff that, they wouldn't enjoy it, or they would think it was too intense. And they all loved it. Like my biggest complaint was that they wanted to move on to more movements. And because it was research, I had to keep doing those same movements for months. And they were like, oh, can we add in this one? Or
Right.
So that was like the only real complaint that we got. So, but yeah, the studio owners definitely saw the value in it and wanted us to keep doing it. So that was cool.
All right, this seems like a really good time to pull into, well, you know what? Let's dance our way into Dissemination Station.
Bow, chicka, wow, wow,
Pardon me, boys, that's Chattanooga choo-choo.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
Oh, sadly, this train of dancers crashed and exploded. We were thrown from the wreckage to have the rest of this discussion. Now, Mallory, I don't know how much you feel, comfortable speaking to this point, but why do you think that coercion as a strategy, maybe specifically just in dance studios, but maybe in other sports you've started looking into, is the main principle of coaching when you clearly see that these simple, I mean, not to belittle all the work you did, but these kind of simple interventions of, look, here's a graph of all the stuff you did, pay off so much. I mean, why do you think it's the culture to just, I'm throwing shoes at you now?
Yeah. Well, dance research shows that people train the way that they were trained, quite simply. So there's a lot of dance articles that have done qualitative research studies where they found that people, even though they didn't like being trained coercively, they say that it made them a better dancer. So they feel that that's an appropriate way to train. I also think it's almost like that negative reinforcement contingency where like you yell at a kid in class and they stop doing that thing that's like bothering you.
Right.
Because I as a dance teacher myself, I'm not perfect. I've had my days where I'm like, I have to tell myself like, Mallory, you're a behavior analyst.
Right.
Don't be sarcastic. Don't be coercive. But we all have our days. But there's been times where I'm in class and I'm like, something's driving me crazy. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could just, yell at them.
Right.
And then stop doing that. But, you have to, but I have the knowledge that I can say, there's other effective ways that I can address this. But I think it's a part of that negative reinforcement trap, as they call it. But mainly the research says it's just because that's how they were trained and that's just how it's always been. And they find it disrespectful almost to their elders to kind of not train. So, but yeah, when I was reading all that research, it was super interesting on like the coercion of dance training. There's actually like one article was published in like a child abuse research journal. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, but there's all this like, stuff about the injuries and things like that. So there's a lot of negative effects of coercion and even like stage fright and things like that. I had one teacher growing up, not in dance, in musical theater, that used a lot of coercion. And I had all kinds of like, just like performance anxiety and auditions from that. And as I got older, got a lot of parts or whatever, it disappeared. But that stayed with me a long time. And I know for some people, they can flourish under coercion, a small amount of people, but for most people, it will lead to attrition or all kinds of negative effects. So,
and those people could have gone on to be excellent dancers as well. Yeah. I feel like this could apply to learning an instrument too. I think that there can be a lot of.
Did you have mean music teachers?
I did.
I didn't really, but I think that people do.
My cello teacher was super nice.
Oh,
I
yeah?
had a mean piano teacher.
My piano teacher was okay.
Yeah,
I don't remember if my
she was frequently mean to me because I did not practice.
But I think that's part of the culture of like piano lessons too.
Right.
Like it's not meant to be fun. You might get yelled at if you didn't practice.
I got yelled at every week.
There you go.
Yeah, we just justify it that we're used to it and that's just how it is. And someone once asked me, they were like, why do you think that teachers will want to do any of this ABA stuff when this other stuff works? And I said, well, I think when they see that it's more effective and like you were saying, it is simple, because it is simple. It's simple. It's more effective than their current training. I think they have to notice that.
Reinforcement works.
Yeah, like even this teacher at the studio, the studio owner, when I first started with the auditory feedback study, she told me about the shoe throwing, and she goes, oh yeah, I do immediate feedback just like that, but instead of a clicker, I throw shoes. And I'm like, wouldn't it just be easier to use a clicker? Like, that's less effort.
Did you pair the shoe throwing with something reinforcing happening? There's candy in the shoe.
I was like, that's less effort. You don't have to get up and go grab your shoe, or like, you know.
Goodness.
I wonder if, even though I know you said that like the teachers didn't feel like they were doing anything differently, I wonder if you use look like get byproducts, if the teachers felt better like when they left the studio, right? Because they're not using coercion, so they're not always the punisher, but if they're focusing more on reinforcing efforts, I wonder if that would change their behavior as well.
Or maybe when they saw the data reflecting the change in the dancers, that was reinforcing for them.
Right.
Because sometimes it is hard to see the change that you're making. So that could have acted as a reinforcer for that positive behavior as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Unknowingly.
Yeah, unknowingly, but...
actually, similar to that point, this teacher, when we did the blind scoring at the end of the study, where we had them score the videos from baseline intervention and didn't tell them like which it was from for social validity. Before she scored the videos, she was still being a little negative, and she was saying that she didn't, like, she saw change, but she didn't see as much change as she would have hoped for. When she watched the videos and scored the videos, and then at the end I told her which one were baseline intervention, she made a comment, and I put that in the article. She was like, oh my gosh, I wish I watched these videos, because when you see it on the video, like, you can really see how much they've improved. So again, that tangible thing, either a video or data, can kind of get them to recognize that a student is working hard and improving.
Yeah, I guess that also speaks to the idea that the fallibility of human memory, even these experts in dance, to kind of, when it's in front of them, they can tell, but when they're sort of thinking back to performance, they're not maybe giving the most accurate response or accurate reporting of what they've seen.
Yeah, and that can be the same with like parents of kids in sports. So how cool would it be, like, because a lot of parents complain like, oh, I paid all this money and my kid didn't improve in a year. But if you can actually show them data as a studio owner or a football coach, like, hey, we had this ABA expert collect data at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and this is, your child did actually improve in all these things. I feel like that would decrease that sort of negative parent interaction that happens a lot.
Or possibly the parents would move to a different agency, right, if there was no change, right?
I know. Yeah, the one studio said that to me. They're like, well, what if there's no change? They're like, then what do we tell people? I said, well, I would tell people that you care enough to collect data and notice that there's no change and make an actual change in the way that you're teaching, whereas other studios wouldn't care enough to invest in that sort of feedback for themselves. So
that's good.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah, great answer.
But that's definitely something that they were concerned about. They're like, what if there's no change at the end of the year? I was like, ooh.
So this is great, because sports, it just so naturally lends itself to behavioral data collection,
It
right?
does.
Because the behavioral output is precisely what everyone is interested in, so you don't have to get buy-in from the instructors and the parents that this should be what we're collecting data on, and this should be the end result, right? There's no like, oh, we're trying to increase their self-esteem. Like, we want to increase their scorpion kick. So this is just a perfect application. Yeah.
I would think baseball would be a really good next venue, because baseball is sort of made up of, similar to dance, there's this many movements you have to make, and if you can make them really well, they build on themselves. Like, you have to be able to swing the bat, you have to be able to throw a ball effectively. I mean, those are two really key things, and batting especially is hard for a lot of kids, and it's you can break it down really easily into component parts and do tag teach or the public posting of feedback, whichever strategy you wanted to, and I bet you'd see similar results.
It's helpful that almost every player on the team needs to do the same movements.
Right.
Because football, too, I mean, there's a certain number of movements, but everyone has different things they need to be able to do. Baseball would be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
We'll tell you guys about soccer later when we've done it.
Kick and
I just have to cut up the oranges, and I got that down.
I think in the team sports too, you can use, so like the matching law equation, how they kind of predict choice, and that sort of like contingency related situation. I think that would be interesting to use in a team sports as well. So I think there's lots of research that can be done, and not just using a task analysis, but using other ways to measure the change in sports performance. And you could actually like do some sort of behavioral intervention and see if you can make an effect in that equation. So something like that would be interesting as well. There's a lot of possibility that's not tapped into.
Yeah. This area is wide open.
It really is. Oops, sorry,
It
go
is
ahead.
hard to publish, though. It's very hard. Like I've run into a lot of, well, this data isn't perfect, and it's like, well, it's very, very hard to conduct research in that environment, and it's hard to publish. And I actually thought about writing an article on doing research in these applied sports settings and like things that you can do to sort of make it easier or watch out for type of things, because it's very, very difficult, and I think that's why a lot of people don't do it. It's hard to publish, I think. So
it's marketable. I think the other piece is people do like sports, and as much as like, well, not everyone's going to be a star athlete, almost every child is going to take part in a team sport, whether it's dance or track and field or baseball or soccer at some point in their lives. And I'm sure a lot of them quit because they don't see that they're improving. Their parents might not be able to help them, or not interested in helping them, or are trying to help them and just don't have the skills to do so. Or the money. They'd love to keep trying, but they can't show the improvements. The coaches can't spend too much time on the individual kids because it's town sports. It's not like they're getting paid. The coaches are getting paid thousands of dollars. So I think it is something that does really impact a lot of, at least in America, the youth in America, and sort of their esteem of how good am I at sports. I love playing sports, but I wasn't particularly good. And when I didn't think I was getting better, I quit. And as an adult, I look back and say, oh, I wish I'd known how to do these things. It was so easy. I just needed to.
Yeah, it would have been more reinforcing for you if you felt like you were succeeding and I think just the individualized format is nice too. Like when I was talking to some parents at the studio about the private lessons, I was saying, in a class setting, you can only move as far in the class as your, I don't want to say weakest student, but I don't know a better word.
I mean, the class sets the pace.
True. Yeah.
Because if you have like a super advanced, it's just like private school versus like public school. If you do private school, you can move at the child's like actual like pace. You might be able to move a lot further. So it's the same with those like private lessons, is you're not really held back by any sort of like class contingency, something like that. So it's nice for the students that are excelling and the ones that are having trouble.
Just want to pause this here 1 second for our second secret code word, and it is FLATS. FLATS. If those of you remember both secret code words, you get my theme? Huh? Maybe? Okay, never mind. Let's get back to our discussion. So Mallory, you're working with new studios now. Do you think you're going to be trying to continue, research in the area, or it's sort of something that you might not have as much time?
That's a big priority of mine. I want us to be a productive research site. So we already have some projects that we're looking at starting. I have a connect with the Tampa Bay Lightning, so we've been looking at doing them.
That's fancy.
What are they?
They're a hockey team.
Come on, Diana.
Your favorite hockey team, Diana.
Oh, that's right. Go Tampa Bay.
So I'm really excited about that. But I definitely, doing research is a huge priority of mine. As far as having time to be like first author on any more studies, I don't think so, because I still have a lot more that I'm working on submitting, and then I just have a lot going on with getting the company set up. But I would love to like take students under my wing and supervise them, and even if they're students in like a master's program, I've already gotten a lot of emails from people who want to conduct sports research. So I would love to even supervise people remotely. Ultimately, what I really want to do is franchise the company so that a behavior analyst who does research in sports in another state can open their own hospital. And obviously I would have like strict criteria to make sure that it stays true to the brand and all that kind of stuff. But that's like my goal. But yes, I want to pump out as many publications as I can. That's something that's really important to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, behavior analysis needs to get out there, and everyone, not everyone, but almost everybody likes sports. So if that's
Go
something that gets
sports
associated
team.
with sports. I think that's good. Oh, it's not just for autism anymore. Tom Brady uses these
Behavior
techniques?
analysis.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really hard market because people don't even know what behavior analysis is, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of people out there, when I tell them I do behavior analysis with sports, they all think sports psychology.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what behavior analysis is, and I kind of have to explain it, in that elevator speech format so that they understand. But a lot of people just look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, "Oh, that sounds cool."
Okay.
What does sports psychology even do?
So sports of the mind, Rob.
Yeah, like motivation, and I mean, we do motivation too, though. So
Yeah, but your motivation seems to be like, look, here are the things you did right, and here are the things to work on, as opposed to be the ball.
My friend is a sports psychologist.
What does he or she do?
She takes athletes that are not performing as well as they could, and they do a lot of talking through why they're not performing well. They'll do some visualizing of the best moment of that part.
Like hot stone massage?
Yeah. That kind of stuff.
Oh.
Like CBT? Is it like...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like cognitive behavior therapy.
Yeah, I'm sure there's validity to that.
Yeah.
Ours is just a kind of a different approach. And I actually would love to, when I'm bigger and making some revenue, I would love to have a sports psychologist on staff just so that we do research, tap into some interdisciplinary research as well. Because I think that's important because, for example, publishing in Java, it's not getting out to anybody.
Right.
I have a study that I'm looking at publishing into a dance journal, and I'm excited about that because at least dance teachers in academia will read that.
Yeah.
No,
it's true.
That's very true.
Well, even behavior analysts. I mean, we're behavior analysts. We read these articles. We thought they were really cool. And, luckily we have this podcast. Otherwise, we'd be like, wow, that was cool. Anyway, what would I do with this dance information?
Right.
Go on with that. Yeah.
I trust you. It seems to work. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was something that when I started, I got really interested in dissemination because, if you look at the ABA research, this sports research has been going on for a really long time.
Yeah.
And we're the first company that's doing this. So it's just interesting because it's been happening for so long and nobody's actually trying to get it out there. But I also understand the reasons why it is hard to pursue something that hasn't been tapped into when there's readily jobs available.
Right.
That's been something hard for me, but I'm just so passionate about it that I don't care at the moment.
Making your own way.
That's good. You find something you like in the field you love, and then you keep doing it. I think that's a great way to be.
Yeah, but it's been hard, graduating with a PhD and being like, I'm not going to go into academia right now, or I'm not going to do this so that I can focus on trying to get into an area that people are like, what's ABA? What's data? So it's
what's data?
I have a lot of faith that it will that it's really going to blow up, once it gets going. I think it will. It's just a matter of getting it out there.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to get our field out there. It's something new. We always need more behavior analysts, but we also need more behavior analysts who are doing things that the average Joe can see and be like, oh, wow, look at that. Looks like these kids couldn't dance, and now they can. Wow, that's great. What did you use? Shoe throwing? I heard that works. No, fool.
Yeah, I would love to get into going to some dance conventions and training some teachers and just exposing them to some ABA stuff. And we're going to start doing workshops at studios where we just we just go in and just give a workshop on auditory feedback and just tell them all about that kind of thing, just so they have an idea.
All right.
Well, Mallory, thank you so very much for talking with us today. This is a really cool topic. It's one we've only really ever scratched the surface on, and it was really nice to get some great background information as to the development of your research and some of the the fun anecdotes that always seem to crop up when research is done.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah, what was can you tell us your website and your company name again?
Sure. It's Applied Behavior Analysis Sports Innovations, or ABASI. And our website is www.abasportsinnovations.com. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram, Abasi LLC. You can always shoot me an email if you have any questions. I'd love to talk about anything further if anybody wants to. or any research collaboration, I would love to talk about that as well.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Cool.
All right. So Mallory, if you're ever up in the New England area, come say hi. And then you can show us the scorpion kick again. It was very impressive for those of you just listening to the audio feed.
Wasn't even warmed up.
All right. Well, Diana and Jackie, thank you guys also so much for being here.
Oh, you know it, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
You guys didn't do as many scorpion kicks, but I still like you anyway.
I did a flitter kick.
Mine were all private behavior. I did them privately.
Private event.
They were a private event.
She's doing private dancer again? I think I did that episode.
You were like, private dancer.
All right, and thanks to everyone out there who is listening to our episode. The ABA Inside Track comes out every week. You can find us online, also at Facebook and on Twitter as ABA Inside Track. You can email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Don't forget, listening to our show, you can apply for continuing education credits through us. We are ACE approved through the BACB. And I think that's all our social plugs. Mallory, thanks again so much for being here. It was such a treat.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week with a preview episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.